Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we've got an episode for you here. This isn't going to be a long episode, but more than anything, I saw this on Twitter today from SP Plus Bill Connolly, and I had to make a video about it and share it with you guys. So SP Plus has come out, and well, it's not come out completely, but parts of it have come out, and Bill Connolly has started to share parts of it. This is like the holy grail of SEC and ESPN metrics and all this stuff. So essentially, this came out, and now every SEC fan, every SEC team, person is hooting and hollering about this because they're talking about just how incredibly tough the SEC is compared to other teams. And it's a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of BS because if we look at SP Plus, maybe this is for another video, but if we look at SP Plus, it is not accurate at the end of the season. It's supposed to be a predictive metric like KenPom. The reason why this hasn't caught on like KenPom has in basketball is because it's not accurate. It does not do a good job of trying to show you who the best teams are and giving you accurate information. They go about 50% against the spread. It's good for lower level teams. You go through SP Plus and you try to get some like betting lines and stuff like that. It's good for lower level teams. We're talking MAC, sometimes Big 12, sometimes ACC, stuff like that. But for the most part, if you're a person betting on Big Ten games, you're more inclined to go look at, just watch the games and figure it out and be a Big Ten fan because SP Plus, I mean, this past year they had Ole Miss rated as the second best team in college football. I'm not kidding you. Ole Miss was the second best team. I put out there that Ole Miss and Alabama were the second and fourth best teams rated in SP Plus, and everybody thought they meant Alabama was number two. No, it was not. It was Ole Miss they had as the number two best team. I think Notre Dame was somewhere at like sixth or something like that. Ohio State is number one in SP Plus, but that is about the only nod they give to the Big Ten because it's SEC everywhere else as evidence of this schedule here. If you're looking here on the side, you can see this is the top 40 schedules in college football this season. Next to the Big Ten teams, I have put a number with in red, so it's easier to see of the number best schedule that is in the Big Ten. If you look over on the, well, I've cut it off. I apologize. But if you count down, you can see to give you a good indication the 25 ends at Missouri. So right before Michigan State, the 25 ends there. Less than half of the Big Ten is in the top 25 in strength of schedule. The entire top 25 or the entire SEC is in the top 25 of most difficult schedules. That is a conference playing 8 conference games is easy. The last 2 seasons has not been the best conference in college football, and based off of returning production and recruiting rankings, this is ranking. This is saying that the SEC's 8 game conference schedule is more difficult than everybody else in the country. Not Ohio State. The Big Ten playing 9 conference games does not even compare to the SEC. Now, I will preface this by saying the Big Ten is not doing a great job of playing out of conference games this year. When you look at the overall schedule here, we'll look at it just a sec. Let me take a sec. All right, back here. I'll pull it up for you. When you look at the 2025 college football or Big Ten football schedule here, you're going to see there are not very many high profile out of conference games in the Big Ten this season. Now, that is the Big Ten's fault. The Big Ten needs to do a better job of scheduling out of conference games. You look at the very first week, pretty much the only games of significance, excuse me, you're going to find outside of a Purdue losing to a MAC team potentially. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just, saying that's what's on people's minds. Purdue fans, don't come at me. But outside of something like that happening, you probably have three games here. Ohio State, Texas is going to be a fantastic game. That's going to be one that a lot of people are going to want to see. UCLA and Utah is another game, but let's face it, like these are two Pac-12 teams. Like the Pac-12 teams were not doing a great job of getting TV ratings, and UCLA and Utah were not one of those teams getting good TV ratings. So will probably be a good game. I'm going to be really interested to see how UCLA does in their second year under Deshaun Foster. But if we're talking like nationally relevant games, no, that will not be a nationally relevant game. Nebraska in a neutral site game against Cincinnati. That will be interesting, right? Nebraska played Colorado last year. It's not going to be a nationally relevant game because Cincinnati is not Colorado. If it was Colorado, they would, but this will not be a nationally relevant game. So really the only nationally relevant game you have in week 1 is Ohio State versus Texas, which by the way, you look at you look at the schedule rankings here and Ohio State is 7th. They play one SEC team and not I wouldn't say an easy Big 10 schedule, but they don't play Penn State, Oregon, Indiana, Illinois. Like they have Penn State, Illinois, Michigan on there. But it, it is not Wisconsin's schedule. We'll talk about Wisconsin here soon. But overall, week 2, you have Illinois at Duke, Iowa at Iowa State, Michigan at Oklahoma, Michigan State against Boston College. You have Oregon against Oklahoma State. UCLA is traveling to UNLV. Like these are games that are relevant to us. Michigan and Oklahoma will be nationally relevant just because of how early it is in the season. Oklahoma's not going to be good by the end of the season, so it's not going to be a game that's referenced at the end of the year as like, oh, look at this. Like Brent Venables is going to get fired at the end of the year. You can mark that down now. I apologize. I forgot to change to the grass background. There we go. Apologies for that. This isn't a basketball show. Come on, JR. Get with the program here. Anyway, like that is not going to be a nationally relevant game at the end of the year. Not through Michigan's fault. It's going to be through Oklahoma. It's basically probably going to be reversed, right? Texas was relevant at the end of the year because they were contending for the college football playoffs, right? Michigan is probably going to contend for that this year. At least they should. That's what Michigan fans are expecting. They're expecting at least a 10-2 season, based off my conversation with college football with Sam. So it's going to be kind of be like that, right? Where Michigan probably gets a little bit of a bump if they beat Oklahoma, just like how Texas got a bump from beating Michigan. But at the end of the day, you're going to look back on that game and be like, okay, you got a bump for beating, whatever they are, 6-6 Oklahoma, 5-7. They should have been 5-7 last year, but Alabama forgot how to play football. Not my problem. All right, Iowa State, like that's going to be relevant to Big 10 and Big 12 fans because that's a big rivalry between those two, but that's not going to be a nationally relevant game. Illinois Duke, like yeah, that's going to be relevant because it's another Power 4 team, but like it's not like Illinois should crush Duke. Yes, it's at Duke, but they should crush them. Like with Illinois and everything they have coming in this season, coming back, returning production, everything else, like, they should crush them. But that it's not going to be a nationally relevant game. Week 3, Minnesota at Cal. At that time you're going to get Northwestern versus Oregon, so that's going to be helpful. But Purdue, USC, but those are in conference games. Wisconsin at Alabama will be interesting, but it's not going to be nationally relevant because sorry Wisconsin fans, but you are not going to win more than 8 games this season. 8 games would be like the Super Bowl for Wisconsin this season. You're not going to win more than 8 though. This schedule is just far too difficult. And Wisconsin is turning things over right now with a new offensive coordinator and everything else. You're not going to win 8 games this year, more than 8 games this year. So that's not going to be a nationally relevant game, kind of for the same reason with Michigan and Oklahoma. It will be on national TV, and it will get a primetime spot because it's Alabama, but it's not going to be a game we look back on all year and look at. So this is the problem right here, is that the Big Ten is not playing big out of conference games. And when you have that, in addition to the blatant SEC bias that ESPN and Bill Connolly have, like this is what you get. You get a top 10 made completely of SEC teams other than one. Wisconsin is the only one. And I would argue this Wisconsin schedule is more difficult than an Oklahoma schedule, right? Check this out. Yeah, so look down here. You'll see Wisconsin's schedule on the left side. You'll see Oklahoma's schedule on the right side. Oklahoma's got their spring game on their schedule, which, okay, whoop-de-doo for you. I don't know. We'll just scroll right past that. I don't know why that has to be on there. But Miami, Redhawks, and Middle Tennessee for Wisconsin, Alabama, and the out of conference. Okay, that's two FBS teams, and then an SEC team in Alabama, which says number 12 in the country. I don't know where they're getting these rankings from. They're not number 12 in the country, but Alabama, they are highly rated in SP Plus this year. They are highly rated in SP Plus against Michigan, who Michigan is also highly rated in SP Plus this year. I don't think they're as high as Alabama, but they're still highly rated in there. But look at who Wisconsin has on their schedule. At Michigan, just 2 games later. Now, Oklahoma plays at Temple. Tell me how that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe that's what got them over, over the hump. But they're actually tied with Florida. We'll look at Florida here in a second. But you have an FCS team, a terrible team in Kent State, who is essentially FCS at this point. I mean, they are terrible. And at Temple on this schedule, compared to Wisconsin playing Miami and Middle Tennessee. That's the out of conference that's not Power 4 teams. And they have, like, Oklahoma has Michigan on here, but I guess at Michigan doesn't mean anything because Wisconsin has at Michigan on here. All right, you go down a little bit lower. They have Texas. Okay, Texas is just as good as Ohio State. Whatever. You have South Carolina. Okay, South Carolina. At South Carolina, I will give them at South Carolina more than Illinois because Illinois is there, but we're going to say Illinois, South Carolina, about the same. They're not on SP Plus because South Carolina is much higher on SP Plus because they have returning production from guys like Dylan Stewart and Lenoris Sellers coming. But you look at that team lost a lot this offseason. Like, South Carolina is not going to be a top 25 team. Well, they might be because they're in the SEC, but they're not going to be a top 25 team this year. You look, South Carolina is not going to be that good. They lost a lot. They brought back Lenoris Sellers, who everybody is hoping will be really good. We'll see. And then you have Dylan Stewart on the defensive line, who made that defensive line really good last year, but we'll see if they can continue to be that the same. They didn't look all that great against Illinois, right? Illinois, they figured out a way to beat them. Go figure. And then on top of that, you have at Tennessee, at Indiana. Tennessee didn't look any different against Ohio State than Indiana looked, quite frankly. Actually, in fact, Indiana put up a better fight at Ohio State than Tennessee did. So I understand Tennessee recruits better, but at the worst, that's a wash between those two. It's not because of SP Plus and how highly they rank Tennessee, but we're just going off a normal discussion here. And then Ole Miss and Oregon. Like, obviously. So I'm just saying, you go down the schedule of Oklahoma. Yes, they have some difficult teams on here. Texas, South Carolina, everybody thinks is going to be good. They're not going to be good. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, and LSU. Well, guess what? Wisconsin plays at Alabama too. So you can go ahead and cross that one out. That's not anything better. And then you have Ohio State, Oregon, at Michigan. Like, really the biggest thing here is you have SP Plus completely overvaluing. And if we could do this with every single schedule. We're not going to do this with every single schedule, but we could do this with just about every single schedule, and it would be that same way. You have teams being way overvalued, like Florida. We look at Florida's schedule. We're not going to, but if we look at Florida's schedule, they have Florida State on there. Florida State is way overvalued on SP Plus because they continue to take. Now, is Florida State going to be a two-win team this next year? No, probably not. But is Mike Norvell on the hot seat? You best believe he is. He doesn't win more than 7 games. He's in trouble. He's in trouble next year. And I got to say, it's not a guarantee that Florida State wins over 7 games next year. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just complete BS. It's more It's more evidence, it's more data about how much ESPN has a bias for the SEC, and everybody just falls in line with that. I was hoping this might be fixed a little bit more, but like I said, folks, there is a reason why SP Plus is not used like a Ken Palm or not used like a net or something like that in college basketball. It's because those have been proven to do a good job. SP Plus has not been proven to do a good job. They do some good job betting lower level games, lower conference games. I shouldn't say lower level, lower conference games that people aren't able to look at. But you look, last year, they did not get the SEC right in the playoffs. I think they got the SEC right in like the obvious games. But they had Georgia beating Notre Dame. They had Tennessee covering against Ohio State. They had Texas covering against Ohio State. Wasn't right. Wasn't right because the SP Plus overvalues the SEC time and time again. Well, once they come out and we start seeing this kind of stuff, we'll look at it more and more. But this was just too much of blatant SEC bias that I couldn't make a video on it. So or I could not make a video. I had to make a video on it. So thanks for watching. Subscribe, like everything here. If you're a SEC fan, you can subscribe and like too. I don't think you'll like me very much, but sure, subscribe, like. If nothing else, you want something covering the actual Big Ten. I do think we are fair when it comes to the games and talking about the teams. I will call out SEC bias every single time though. And this right here, SP Plus by Bill Connolly, is blatant SEC bias. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.